Hey, it's Squidly. A lot of backpackers struggle to find the right recipe for good sleep on a backpacking trip. Most of the recommendations I see involve changing out pieces of your sleep system. In this video, I'm going to give you 9 tips for better sleep on a backpacking trip, but only 2 of these tips are going to have anything at all to do with gear. So stick around and see if from these 9 tips, if you can put together the right recipe for you to get better sleep on a backpacking trip. I asked about getting good sleep on a backpacking trip on the community page of my YouTube channel, and I got several recommendations, and so I have put those together to be sort of 4 of these recommendations, and I had 5 that are my own. So let's start with the recommendations I got on my community page. Of those 4, the big one, I think, is the kind of the elephant in the room, and it is to get a hammock system. Just abandon being a ground dweller and sleep in the trees. Now, for most people, that would be a pretty expensive change to make, and that's one of the 2 that involves a big change in gear. So I'm not necessarily recommending that, but everyone who sleeps in hammocks swears by it because you just get better sleep. The second recommendation that came off my community page was essentially recommendations that surround getting tired. For example, one person said, hike a 20-mile day. And I would even add to that at night, stay up as late as you can, so that by the time you sort of just give up and decide, okay, I'm just going to sleep, you are already really tired. The third has to do with what you hear at night. The wilderness at night can have a lot of strange sounds, or at least sounds that we're not familiar with sleeping next to. And so the recommendations centered around kind of going in 2 different directions depending on the circumstances. If you are in a place where the sound of rushing water in particular is accessible, camp near that so that you're able to essentially have the sound of running water as white noise that'll help drown out some of those sounds. Speaking from personal experience, I know that helps me sleep at night. If you're not around the sound of water where it sort of acts as white noise, and especially if you're around other people who snore, in particular this guy, then someone recommended having earplugs. Personally, I don't like the idea of having earplugs. I want to be able to hear if something is close to me at night, but a lot of people swear by having earplugs just to drown out the other sounds that are around them. And the 4th recommendation that came off the community page I thought was really an interesting one. It said basically to dress in a similar way to how you dress for sleep at home. Now, that person who recommended this also qualified it with having enough so that if the weather is cold, that you have enough to be layered up and kept warm. But basically their response to it was, at home, I don't sleep in base layers, so I'm not going to sleep in base layers on the trail because it would just be uncomfortable or kind of foreign to them. All right, so for the 5 recommendations that I have experimented with and I found they work for me, the first one actually is a recommendation that came from J-Ben at J-Ben Hikes, and that is to drink sleepy time tea right before bed. And his description I thought was pretty funny. He said that he drinks it and it is all rainbows and unicorns as he goes off to sleep. And he's not wrong. The second one is one that's a little bit more common, I think, and that is to take a melatonin before bed. It used to be that I would just take a 3 milligram melatonin, or I might take 2 of those, and that was enough. But I have recently discovered the 12 milligram, where it's 6 milligrams to get you to sleep and then 6 milligrams of extended release that keeps you asleep. And I found that those work really well. Number 3 points to a problem that someone expressed on the community page. They didn't really have any recommendations. They just basically said they don't get very good sleep on trail, which I get. But they said part of the reason why is that in the middle of the night, they'll have to get up and go to the bathroom, get out of the tent, go, and then come back, and now they're wide awake. And in order to fight that, now this is not a cure for that, but in order to fight that is to, in the tent, use I call it a nighttime relief bottle, just to sort of clean it up a little bit. But use that in order to relieve yourself so that you can stay in the tent and sort of even stay with your quilt or your sleeping bag draped over you, so you're not, getting out, getting cold, and having to get out and go walk around and then come back. But it keeps all of those things from happening so that you get up, relieve yourself, put that bag outside the tent, and you can go right back to sleep. My fourth recommendation is something that I should have done a very long time ago. This is the one that has to do with a piece of gear, but it is to use a pillow, a designated pillow. For years, and when I say years, I really mean probably a couple of decades, I used just whatever I could kind of put together to make a pillow out of either my fleece or my extra clothes or what, and put it in a stuff sack. It was never comfortable. It never really worked that well, and it led to years of just not getting very good sleep on the trail. And so when I decided, okay, I'm just going to get a legit pillow, a designated pillow, I haven't looked back from that. The improvement in sleep is so great that the experience I had before versus what I'm experiencing now are not even comparable. My final recommendation for good sleep is using a buff, because for one thing, the buff is going to keep your neck and your head warm, especially like your ears. Keep that warm because you're going to get drafts either at the top of your quilt or sleeping bag. The other advantage of having a buff is that when you have your beanie on your head, you pull the buff up over it and it holds it on your head. So in the middle of the night, that beanie isn't kind of working its way off your head. You either eventually lose it or it comes off your ears. Now your ears are cold. It just keeps all of that series of things from happening so that you're able to stay a little more comfortable and not, hopefully, wake up so much. Okay, those were 9 recommendations for getting better sleep on a backpacking trip. Do me a favor. In the comments, tell me what I missed. What else do you do to get good sleep? And tell me if I was off base about something. Just be nice about it. As always, thanks for watching to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.